Hi, just a disclaimer before I start my presentation, the service that I'm using to make this presentation and recording will only let me do 15 minutes tops, so I'm gonna add 5 minutes in addition to this. So this is part one of my recording. So hi, my name is Laura Hunt, and this is my presentation for the Disability Justice and Advocacy class. And I chose to do this presentation and my paper on the social, cultural, and environmental effects of autism in specifically children. So to start off, we're just gonna talk. I'm just gonna talk about what autism is. So and give a definition. Autism is a developmental disability that affects people of all ages. It causes difficulty with communication, social interaction, and behavior. And that's just a very broad definition. There's a lot more to it, but that's just an overall look at it. And then second subtopic that we're going to go into is environment. So, children with autism interact with their environment in different ways and have many different needs than those individuals without autism. So, children with autism are affected in many different ways, culturally, socially, and environmentally. These individuals need to be supported in the classroom, workforce, home life, and beyond. But specifically, right now, we're just going to look at the home environment and school environment because those are most important for children with autism. So, first, we have the school environment. So, one way that children with autism are affected environmentally is within their school environment. Individuals with autism may learn in a very different way than others. Children with autism need to be supported in different ways within the classroom, and one way to do this would be to incorporate the use of multimedia. We will take a deeper look at multimedia in a later slide. Um, and then Next, we're going to take a look at home life. So, within children with autism home environment, there are many different important factors to consider. It's important that they have a consistent schedule and consistent caregiver. Children with autism really thrive when they have a strict schedule that they stick with, and it really helps them to thrive and succeed in their lives. And it's also important that their caregiver at home advocates and supports them with every aspect of their life, and it's really important that they have that person to be there for them. So, next, we're going to go into multimedia tools and how important and beneficial that can be. So, multimedia has become a very vital tool in those individuals, their families, and their professionals' lives. It allows them to connect with others, receive and give support, and to tell their stories. Multimedia allows people with learning disabilities to learn in a way that works best for them, whether that be using touchscreens, listening, videos, pictures, etc. It gives them the flexibility to do that. And here's a quote that I have from Sad, Deshati, and Soleil. The start of the quote is from the performance aspect, it has been observed that both static and dynamic tutorials had excellent results on the cognitive ability of the children with ID, allowing them enhanced learning, higher relative performance, higher scores, acceptance, and motivational levels. The children exhibited an average score between 70 and 80% and even higher motivational levels ranging from 80 to 90%. In conclusion, the use of multimedia enhanced learning has been found to be extremely beneficial for children with ID, as well as practical and efficient for their instructors. End of the quote. And then, while there are many benefits to using technology, to support people with learning disabilities, there are some difficulties that come with it as well. Peter Williams states, difficulties, start quote, difficulties faced by teachers included a lack of poorly functioning equipment, a pausality of appropriate learning materials, and unusual challenges posed by different needs of learners. The needs of teachers included ways of facilitating evidence of progress, lesson plans classified according to cognitive and accessibility levels, and administrative information. End quote. In order for this approach to reach its fullest potential, everyone participating must be fully prepared and equipped. Another technology issue discussed by Peter Williams and David Nicholas is the difficulty using a mouse. For some individuals, the use of the computer mouse and cursor is very difficult and can lead to unsuccessful results. In order to avoid this, the use of a touchscreen device or a slower cursor would be beneficial. Individuals participating in the RIC Center's Stay Connected project use a variety of different devices to access the multimedia website. 35 users use a tablet or smartphone, which allows them to bypass the difficulties they may encounter with a mouse or cursor, whereas only 2 users use a laptop to access the website. Peter and David also state the authors suggested that many of the problems encountered by users are of a nature that designers alone cannot be accepted to recognize and remedy. These problems can only be resolved by including disabled users directly in the design and evaluation of websites. End quote. When looking to solve the difficulties and problems that come with using technology to support people with learning disabilities, it is important to have them be the center of the solving. Another aspect of multimedia use that is very important is how engaging and motivating it is. If a multimedia site does not keep the attention of the individuals using it, there are no benefits. Rachel Johnson and John R. Reggedy discussed this idea. Start quote. Stoney and Oliver, 1998, in their research on interactive multimedia learning environments, maintain that motivation and engagement are essential prerequisites for computer-based learning. They say that in order for a computer-based learning environment such as the web to be engaging and motivating, it should satisfy several criteria. The first is immersion. The learner should be totally engrossed in the activity. Play is another important part of the learning process and can eradicate boredom and stress if incorporated into computer-based exercises. Student choice allows the student to have more control over the session, which again fosters motivation and engagement. End quote. Using multimedia has changed the way that individuals live their life. They have the opportunity to become more independent and to work towards things that make them happy. It allows the individual's lives to be more centered around themselves and to eliminate some of their limitations. Marshall H. Raskind, Joseph K. Corgson, and Kenneth L. Herman discuss how beneficial technology can be for these individuals. To start the quotation, she emphasizes that technology can be used to liberate and empower persons with learning disabilities by fostering special talent, accentuating strengths, and compensating for difficulties. The author also points out how technology can be used to help persons with learning disabilities attain life goals rather than the more limited goals of the school environment. End quotation. If done correctly, the use of multimedia can be very beneficial for people with learning disabilities. It is beneficial in their education, their social lives, future planning, becoming more independent, daily living, medical records slash planning, and many other things. Multimedia is also very beneficial for the family and supporters of those individuals by giving them the tools to help and support. Next, as a part of my research project, I interviewed someone, so we're going to take a look into my interview. To better understand the social and environmental aspects of autism, I interviewed a peer of mine, Sarah, and I also had an interview with her mother, Carrie. Sarah is currently a sophomore at Arizona State University studying communications, and Sarah is also on the autism spectrum. While discussing the social aspect of her life and how her autism affects her, Sarah and I looked at her childhood, high school, and college, and how her friends, family, and strangers interact with her. I also chose to interview her mother in order to gain a deeper understanding of the impact that Sarah has made on her family and her community. To briefly summarize this part of our conversation, First, Sarah and I discussed her childhood and her early diagnosis. The first indicator of her being on the autism spectrum was her delay in speech and communication. The typical child starts to communicate and talk around 12 to 18 months. However, Sarah's language abilities developed at a much slower rate than the typical child. Sarah began communicating and speaking at the age of 3 years old. Speech delay is what led her parents to have a conversation with her pediatrician. Her parents were then informed that there may be several different reasons for this delay in speech, and then Sarah was tested and later diagnosed with autism. And then, when speaking to Carrie, Sarah's mom, about when Sarah was diagnosed, and she expressed how difficult it was to even get Sarah to the testings. And this is a really big aspect of her environment and how difficult her environment made things on Carrie and Sarah. Carrie and Sarah are from a small town in Illinois where there are not very many resources for individuals with disabilities, and in order to get Sarah tested, they would have to travel to a larger city about an hour and a half away. So Carrie did also express during this time in the interview how overwhelmed she was with this diagnosis because she had little to prior knowledge about autism and did not have any experience with individuals with autism. Carrie was very during this time, Carrie also emphasized how much Sarah's doctors were very helpful throughout this whole process. And during this time too, Carrie became very invested in autism research. So the next area of Sarah's childhood that we discussed was her time in elementary school. Sarah really didn't have very much to add to this area of the interview. She explained that certain subjects such as math and science were very difficult for her, but she excelled in other subjects such as spelling. Um, Carrie really expanded on this time period of Sarah's life and really painted a picture of what it looked like. She really talked a lot about how difficult it was to work with Sarah's school due to the fact that it was very small and they did not have a separated learning environment for children with learning disabilities. Sarah instead had a teacher's aide that followed her throughout each grade level and helped her to figure out a way of learning that best fit for her. For Sarah, audio learning was extremely difficult. In order for her to learn and understand something, she must see it and she must write it down in order for it to really sink in. Carrie said that she spent a lot of time working with Sarah's teachers, teachers' aide, administration, and even the school board in order to make sure that Sarah's needs were supported and understood in the classroom. During all of Sarah's life, Carrie during out throughout the whole entire interview, Carrie really emphasized that during Sarah's whole life, she really had a close group of friends that were a part of Sarah's life since they were infants, and she really expressed her gratitude for these friends and explained to me that they always treated Sarah as a normal friend and never treated her any differently. And Carrie attributes Sarah's success socially to these friends. So the next part that I discussed with Sarah was her time in high school. Um, Sarah really started to participate more in the interview during this time and had a lot more to say. She explained to me how the first year and a half of high school was really difficult for her because her family moved from Illinois to Phoenix, Arizona. And Sarah said that moving away from her friends and the environment that she grew up in was very difficult and it took her a really long time to adjust to this big transition. And then after that time, she really started to feel more comfortable at her new school and people around her. And then she started to really thrive and continued soccer and started to make a lot more friends.